On arrays. So in this section we will talk about our first data structure of this course, that is known as array, and it's a very simple, very useful data structure, and it has a lot of real life use case as well. So what is an array? So you must have learned about a variable in a programming language. So what is a variable? A variable is a bucket that stores some data. For example, I want to store the number of let's say friends I have. So I can create a number of variable of the type integer, and this variable will store, okay, I have 5 best friends, so it will store this inside a particular memory. But suppose we have something complex, we want to store marks of students, and we want to store marks of, let's say, 100 students. Okay, so what we need is a collection of elements. Okay, we cannot create 100 variables, but what we will create is an array. Okay, so let's create an array like this. So we call this as, let's say, marks, and each index, okay, so this array is indexed from 0. Let's say if it is having a size of 100, then these are 100 buckets which are lying linearly in the memory. So this linear collection of elements is known as an array. So the last index would be 99, and we can say we have 100 buckets which are lying linearly in the memory. Similarly, I can say this looks like an array of cats. Okay, so instead of having a simple data type, we are having a different kind of a data type where each element is of the type cat, and each cat can have different attributes, maybe a cat height, maybe a cat color, maybe a cat type. Okay, but for now let us just focus on simple array. Let's say you want to store the marks of every student out of 100. Maybe this student got 89, this got 78, this got 32, this got 56, and so on. Okay, and maybe this got 84. So what will happen is, how you're going to read this array, how you're going to write this array, we are just going to see that. And you can access marks of any student by writing marks of I. Okay, so what you can do, you can access the ith bucket by using this notation, marks of I. So you can perform different operations. For example, you can read what are the marks of the ith student, you can update what are the marks of the ith student, you can even output what are the marks of the ith student. So let us talk a little bit about arrays. So array is a collection of elements of the same type placed in a continuous memory location. Okay, so these are the two important things you should remember. The array should have elements of the same type, but in some other languages like Python, you can have equivalent data structure is called as a list, and list is heterogeneous in Python. Okay, but in C++ and in Java, these arrays, all the elements should be of the same type. That means you cannot put a string and an integer inside the same array. Okay, if you want to store data like this, you also need to convert this into a string. Everything should be of the same type. Okay, and they are placed in a continuous memory location. That means each bucket is, let's say, if each integer is taking 4 bytes, and let's say if this address of the memory is 100, then the next address will be 104, the next address would be 108, the next address would be 1112, and so on. Okay, so that means arrays lie linearly inside the memory. Okay, now we will look at how we can perform different operations on arrays, how we can create input, output, and update. So one more thing I want to talk about is, let us talk about character arrays. Okay, so in character array, each character has a size of 1 byte. So instead of having this memory of size 4 bytes like we have in the case of an integer, this memory is of the type 1 byte. Okay, so if this address is 100, the next address would be 101, the next address would be 102, and this is how we can store characters inside a particular array. So if I say, okay, give me array of 1, so that means at array of 1 what we have, it will print B. Okay, B as a character. So at each position we can store a single character, and this can be any character. Okay, so in an ideal case, we will see later also, these character arrays should be terminated by a special character that is known as a null character. Okay, so this is something you should not forget. You should always null character at the end of a character array. So we will see why it is needed and why it is helpful. So let us talk a little bit about integer arrays first. So this code example shows you how you can create an array. So here we are creating an array and we are telling the compiler that you should allocate memory of how much size? I need 100 boxes, and since it is of the type integer, each integer takes 4 bytes, so it would be 4 into 100. So it will allocate a linear memory of 400 bytes when your program is being compiled. Okay, so the kind of allocation we are doing here is known as static memory allocation. We are defining the size before the program is executed. We are not defining this size on a runtime, so we are statically allocating these arrays. And here what we are doing, we are creating array, okay, and it has 100 elements, and the first element of the array is initialized with 0. So whenever you do an initialization, okay, so what happens is this is called as an initialization list. Okay, so in this list we only define the first element as 0. So whenever you do initialization of an array, the remaining elements of the array would automatically become 0. Okay, so what would happen in the first case, if you print this array, you will see that this contains some random data. So we call this random data as garbage data. Okay, we have not done initialization. If that is not initialized, it will contain garbage. What will happen in this case? So we have given 3 elements in the initialization list. So we would have 3 elements whose values are 1, 2, 3, and the remaining elements would be 0 automatically. Okay, and what would happen in this case? In this, you can see we have not defined the size of the array. Okay, so if you're given the initialization list, then defining the size is actually optional. And what you can do is you will have only array of size 3 in which we have 3 elements 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you can also have array of complex data type such as a string. So string is a predefined data type, and string itself is an array of characters. Okay, so you can see this is a linear array of strings. Okay, and each string is also an array, so it's kind of a 2D array. So we will see this little later on in this course. Okay, so just I'm telling you, you can also create array of some complex data type. So I hope this is clear. How do we create an array? And now in the next video we will do some coding and see how we can input, output, update and print